One becomes a scoring king in defeat, a quarterback taking a dark retreat, and another quarterback looking for some work around Bourbon Street. It's the Richie Hicks Jr. Sports Podcast. I am joined by my co-host, Mr. Mike Zappy. How you doing? Good to see you. Today we're going to be speaking on NBA history. And no, I'm not talking about the Knicks' victory over the Magic. There was not a lot of historical value there. LeBron James became the NBA's all-time leading scorer. We're going to chime in on it. We're also going to make sure to chime in on LeBron's comments because we always make sure to do that around here. Michael Irvin, temporarily out of a job with NFL Network. We're going to expand on the details there. Aaron Rodgers on a retreat to potentially mull his future on retirement or the next step. And Derek Carr has been given permission by the Las Vegas Raiders to meet with the New Orleans Saints. The Raiders have a date, February 15th, to decide what to do with Carr, whether it's trade him or release him. There will be financial ramifications regarding the future of Derek Carr. We're going to start with history being made last night. LeBron James becomes the all-time NBA leading scorer. Does he need more to be considered the GOAT? All right. I'm going to chime in on my side, and then I'm going to chime in on a thought of mine. First and foremost, congratulations to LeBron James. It is a phenomenal feat. No matter how you feel about the player, whether you like him, whether you're indifferent, whether you love the guy, he's been playing professional basketball since the age of 18 over the course of a 2-decade career. It's a phenomenal feat, no matter how you slice it. Having said that, I'm not all that endeared with some of his comments following this. I understand that when you get in between the lines and when you play the game at the highest level, you're supposed to think that you are the best. I understand that mentality. But what I don't necessarily understand is, in my opinion, having to sell it to the media constantly. He's made comment, and I'm paraphrasing, I smirk. Nobody ever talks about me being one of the greatest scorers. Now they have no choice. To me, that's a backhanded shot at the media, or for those who don't consider him the prolific scorer that a Jabbar or a Michael Jordan was, or a Wilt Chamberlain. Okay. But to say that he feels he's the greatest basketball player ever, I don't, it's like for someone who doesn't want to be subject of the ridicule, I do feel in that regard, he does to a level bring it on himself. I don't believe that the Black Mamba or MJ or Magic or Mr. Jabbar ever had to plead their case to the media. I feel that they did it in between the lines, and that's why we recognize them and categorize them or put them in their respective rankings because of what they did on the court, not the gum flapping off it. I want to make that clear. This is a phenomenal feat. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar held this record for 40 years. And Kareem Abdul-Jabbar only made one three-pointer in the history of his career. That is a variable that I think people don't fully put their head around. Zappy sent me this. I want to read it to you all. In terms of field goals made, since we have no other choice, we're going to be comparing some of these things. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar made field goals, 15,837. LeBron James, 14,053. There's a couple of ways to view this. LeBron's been a professional since he was 18 years old, as I already stated. Kareem won a full goal at UCLA, being the most decorated college athlete before playing in the NBA. Coming from New York, I can confidently say that Kareem Abdul-Jabbar is the greatest player to ever come out of New York City. At the time, his name was Lou Alcindor. I feel that this has opened up more debate than it has to be. I think it's good for these guys to be on the same plane, to congratulate each other, but I must admit, watching the game last evening, seeing the clips. I don't believe that Kareem Abdul-Jabbar necessarily wanted this guy to break his record. I think Jabbar is going to do the classy thing, and he's going to do what he should do. But I don't necessarily believe that he wanted this man to break his record for a litany of reasons. I have a theory as to why Kareem Abdul-Jabbar is not recognized in the GOAT conversation as frequently as he should. And I got a little food for thought on this, and then I'm going to let Zappy rip. First and foremost, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar was very active when he chose a change of faith, joining the Muslim Brotherhood. During a time in this country where I feel it took a lot of courage to be on that platform and to address a lot of the injustices that were occurring, or a lot of the inequalities that were occurring for people of color. This is the same era as your Vietnam War. This is the same era as Muhammad Ali joining the Nation of Islam, hand in hand with the late Malcolm X. This is also the time of civil rights movement. This is also the time of Dr. King. A lot of things were going on in this country. When I think about polarizing figures and who heroes are, this is a little bigger than basketball to me. This is also a little bigger than boxing if we're talking about Muhammad Ali, who my nephew just recently did a report on. Those are heroes, folks. Those are a different caliber of thing. And you could debate GOAT all day long, and there's not necessarily a wrong answer, but I want to make one thing clear. They talk about character off and on the court. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar checks every last box, as does Muhammad Ali. I don't think they called Muhammad Ali the greatest because he had 56 KOs. I think they called Muhammad Ali the greatest because of everything he stood for. And I do believe that in an era of marketing and just pushing it and pushing it and pushing it, I do believe that Kareem Abdul-Jabbar conveniently has been forgotten. And I do think the NBA has had a very favorable hand in this. And that's not right. No knock on LeBron. Congrats on your record. But show a little more respect for those who came before you. Because what that man accomplished was a lot more than just what he did on the hardwood.
He's not the GOAT. He's the greatest scorer of all time, statistically speaking. You can't argue that anymore. He is. His name will forever be, or not forever, but will be for number one for the foreseeable future. Probably for the rest of our lifetime. Maybe not. Time will tell. I look at a lot of things when it comes to the GOAT conversation. And, you know, while we speak of longevity and all that, Kareem went to college. Like you said, the most decorated college basketball player ever. Jordan went to college. He had a phenomenal career at North Carolina. Jordan retired a couple of times. And so while LeBron did this in 1,410 games, Jordan only played a little over 1,000 games. And for his career, averaged 30.1 points per game. If Jordan would have played the exact same amount of games that LeBron played while he's also catching up to Kareem, Jordan would be sitting at over 43,000 points. And we would not even be having this conversation. And it'd probably be more because, like, Jordan didn't play to go out there to chase records and all that, because he said it himself. If he did, then he would have continued playing. He would have never retired. You know, it was not those accolades he was looking for. And then you look at the actual accolades per player. I mean, Stephen A. Smith said this morning that he believes LeBron is the greatest all-around player ever. I don't agree with that either, because I look at what Jordan did on the defensive side of the ball and LeBron, and Jordan's defense is one of the best we've seen. A 9-time NBA first team, NBA Player of the Year. You know, like just the guy was a great all-around basketball player. I guess where LeBron might get the edge is because LeBron's taller and he's able to cover the big man. But to me, that's not enough. So, yeah, congratulations to LeBron. I'm not going to take away from what he did last night. Also considering that this is the first time in my lifetime I've ever experienced this, because that held since April 5th, 1984, and I was born in February of that year. So I don't think at 2 months old or a month and a half old, I'm going to be able to remember watching Kareem make the all-time list. And honestly, to answer his question, I think Curry is arguably one of the greatest scorers of all time, to answer with Jay. But, you know, there's just, I'm going to give LeBron what's due. Like I said the other day, Brook Lopez now has more total career points than Bill Russell. So does that make him a greater scorer than Bill Russell? A greater player? No, it doesn't. And then the other factor about it that you did it in a losing effort. You dropped 48 points and you still lost. The Lakers are now the 13th seed in the Western Conference. Like, I just don't agree. I don't know. I don't see it. It's not great for me. And plus, the other thing I'll mention, what a slap in the face to the state of Ohio, the city of Akron, the city of Cleveland, where I think this record would have meant more if LeBron as a Cavalier, as opposed to going to LA and then accomplishing the record there. That's the other part I don't like about it. But yeah, man, I can't put him up there. He's still not even in my top 10 yet. That's
Zappy,
just
do
my
me a solid.
opinion.
If you don't mind, buddy, you're getting a little feedback. I think you might want to click onto your hotspot. I'm not sure if that's a thing over there, but it seems like you're slightly on a delay. I heard everything you said clearly, but just preventing maybe an issue in a few minutes.
Stop yelling at me, please.
No, Zappy, I love the way you broke that down. I think it's incredibly logical. And like I said, this is not a show to tear down LeBron. But when I think about how today's society and how so many people, whether it's music, whether it's sports, many forms of art, many forms of Hollywood, acting, etc., I feel like more and more people do not look to the pioneers, and they do not pay homage to how or why they are even in these positions to be recognized this way. We live in an era where everything is overanalyzed, where everything is beaten like a dead horse. And, no matter what the media drives, the eye test is still the eye test. And I've seen Jabbar, Magic, Kareem, Kobe, and Michael all play, as well as LeBron, of course. So, there's nothing necessarily that the media is going to pitch at me that's going to change my opinion on how I view these players. And when people try to enter that GOAT conversation and push LeBron on me over MJ, quite frankly, to this day, I still feel the only one that is truly worthy of getting that is indeed Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. They took a list of 112 NBA players voting on who the GOAT was. I think like 5 or 6 said Kobe, about 30 or so said LeBron, and about 80 or so said Jordan, something like that, maybe 60 or so. I'm not sure what I mathed it out over 112. But the point I'm making is the majority of these players are in the league. I want a bigger scope. I want guys that are retired that are far removed from the league. Some of them were, like a Bill Laimbeer, actually voted for LeBron. I can understand that to a level, because Laimbeer might view MJ not in the same godlike way that a lot of fans do, because of the fact that he beat him and he played him. So I can understand that. I honestly could. Like if you'd say the relationship like a Bill Russell and a Wilt Chamberlain had, or even a Jabbar had with a Wilt Chamberlain, a young Jabbar, Wilt Chamberlain, Lou Alcindor at the time was Jabbar, I don't think that he was starstruck to the level of where he's like, because it's similar to the Kobe and Jordan thing, or even Shaq when he first played his idol Patrick Ewing. They say you got to slay the monster, your idol, to get to that next level. So I don't think in that regard it was like that. But the ulterior motives and the nonstop narratives, it does kind of get sickening over time. And quite frankly, I think a lot of people would agree with this. While I am a basketball fan and while I do love this game, I do believe that the product that the NBA has put out over the course of the last 15 years pales in comparison to the product that it put out for the previous 30 years. And there is a litany of reasons why it's that way. But, this is the era that LeBron represents, so to speak. And this is also an era where LeBron runs into a Tim Duncan and a Steph Curry. He's kind of a tweener in between both those players. When you look at the individual success both these players had against him, that opens up a whole nother can when you want to consider your GOAT. Because if you want to be considered the greatest of all time, you should start with being the greatest in your own era. And what's ultimately cumulative to how we vote who the greatest is? Wins and losses. Hey, going to 10 NBA Finals is no small feat. And I'm not going to sit here and act like there's not something to say about that. But, there are a lot of variables and a lot of things, For that, I said it best, at least I think I did, when I made my comment about this right here. This says it all as far as I'm concerned. Jabbar never shot threes. And considering it was a big man's game, I'm talking about heavy lifting, power, get your flex on against some of the best, biggest men in the world at the time playing this great sport. I think the hard points and the journey to the record needs to be taken into account. They were all from the free throw line and from inside a three, which means that more shots. But the fact that it still stood for 40 years in a league that's driven offensively, where everybody and their mother shoots three-pointers now, there is something to say about that for a 40-year record.
Yeah, no kidding. When you're talking about big men that can dribble the ball or step outside and shoot the three, And
I'm not hating on this brand of basketball, the Euro step and all the stuff that is different with today's game. You take a guy like a Patrick Ewing, who I'm very fond of. I think he would have enjoyed playing in this era because for a big man, he had quite the stroke from 18, 22 feet out. Occasionally, Ewing would surprise you and pop a three. In this era, I do believe Patrick Ewing would have been more of that kind of finesse player instead of maybe around the rim. But it is certainly a different game. But when Kareem, when Russell, when Wilt, when all these dudes, Bob Lanier, all these great centers played, even newer guys that from our lifetimes, like a David Robinson, a Patrick Ewing, a Shaquille O'Neal, a Hakeem Olajuwon, a Rick Smits, all these other centers, Divac, yada, yada, Moses Malone, all these guys. It was a big man's game, which started to change the trajectory of it not being a big game is when Larry Bird and Magic Johnson wowed the NBA world in the 80s while facilitating for big men, but it was starting to turn, and obviously Michael Jordan, that's when it truly switched to power, that even when you still had your quality centers, it was no longer deemed a big man's game. But you look at the history and the trajectory of this league, and some of the greatest dynasties were built on the shoulders of that center position. And that's all I got, man. LeBron, let us judge it. Stop leaning on the media to reassure you that you are the GOAT. You're a great player. Be confident in where you are in history because you are one of the best that ever did it. But when it comes to that stuff, it's a bad look. It's a real bad look.
He doesn't care about that.
I know.
He doesn't. I guess the next question is, who's next? Who can do it? The next active player.
I will say this: it will not stand for 40 years, and that is something that needs to be held into account too. It will not be held for 40 years, and that speaks to my point about the difference in the game.
If you look at Cam Johnson out of Brooklyn, what he's been doing the last few games with 3 straight 49-point games, 40 nights.
Hey, listen, I'm not trying to hate on what the Donovan Mitchells and the Luka Doncics are doing in today's NBA, or even LeBron at his age still putting it down like that. But my God, in today's NBA, dude, what would Michael Jordan average? What would Kobe Bryant average in today's NBA?
Jordan averaged 30.1 in the old NBA.
Yeah, in the NBA that was very physical, that you left scarred after games.
He'd be at the 40-point threshold right there.
Had a good
Yeah,
time.
I guess.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was gonna say, I guess, when I look at the active players that are in the conversation, it's Kevin Durant and James Harden and Steph Curry, and
Yeah.
out of those three, I don't see them coming close.
No, they're not.
It's I think
longevity is
it's
a serious thing, and I will give the king that much. I will give LeBron some props on the longevity aspect of it. The kid's been playing under the microscope of a watchful media for almost 25 years now, when you consider his high school exploits, going straight from high school to the pros. One of the more impactful players. I mean, who else could even be in the conversation of making that kind of impact from high school to the pros that's like carved out a Hall of Fame career? You'd have to say Kevin Garnett and probably Moses Malone.
And Kobe.
Because there were a lot of other players who took that route. But I will say this, and once again, not trying to take a crap on LeBron, but Kobe was a philanthropist through and through long before anybody in the world knew that. Very cultured because of the many places he lived and the many experiences he had. And I also think Kobe had an inside track of how to deal with life of being an NBA superstar or being around that kind of stuff because of who his father was, playing in the league, also playing in Europe, living in Europe. I think Kobe was already trained at a very young age to be prepared for that kind of star and that kind of light on you. And you talk about greatest Lakers, and you made the point about the whole Akron thing, and they got to feel some kind of way in Cleveland/Akron, Ohio in general. And I must admit, it is kind of weird. That would be like if Derek Jeter got his 3,000th hit playing for Boston, or playing for, like, even worse, playing for like the Royals or some team that nobody even associated with him.
Yeah, and that's the part that bothers me, because when you hear a guy like Magic Johnson say, "And thank you for you doing it in the purple and gold," it's like, come on, man. Like, LA is not the team that LA once was.
No, not by any means. And, I do believe that Magic Johnson is so humble by graciously saying that Kobe Bryant is the greatest Laker of all time. While I don't have an issue with Magic giving that to Kobe, I'll be honest. I think Magic Johnson is the greatest Laker of all time. That's just my opinion. And I think mine is founded off of more realistic facts than playing a homer card or playing any of the other stuff or media things. I love Kobe Bryant, and the world misses him. But I do believe that Magic Johnson was the greatest Laker, because the Showtime Lakers were half of the reason why the NBA was saved.
Here's another good example. I'm going to put it into game minutes played. LeBron did this in 53,741 minutes played. Kareem did it in 57,446. So, all right. Jordan, in his career, while getting over 32,292 points, he did that in 41,010 minutes.
Yeah.
So you're talking about 12,000 less minutes, 300 less games. I will present every fact, and I will go down swinging with that debate. But I'm sorry, it just cannot take the GOAT away from Jordan because he has more points. I don't care.
Wanted to make a quick mention. Saw Riddick Bowe last evening at the Magic Knicks game. Shout out Brett. Shout out to his wife Brenda for being the driver. Had a good time last night. I must say it was a game the Knicks stole and a game that I didn't think we were going to win. It was cool seeing the former heavyweight champion of the world sitting in our section. He looks healthy, and it's a good thing to see because boxing does a toll on so many. So it's good to see that the former champ Riddick Bowe looks healthy. Also saw original Magic player Reggie Theus, really nice guy, as well as Bo Outlaw. Bo Outlaw, back in the day, used to be a huge contributor and supporter to the former WNBA team, the Orlando Miracle. But Bo Outlaw has always been a visible guy in Orlando and just one of the real good guys from the NBA. Knicks were fortunate to win last night, I got to say. Julius Randle he put up the numbers, but had a sloppy night. Jalen Brunson is something else, though. I gotta say, man, it's one thing watching him on TV, but seeing Jalen Brunson as close as we were sitting, I'm like, my God, this guy truly can be special. And if things pan out a certain way, can possibly challenge Walt Clyde Frazier for one of the true great Knick point guards. But had a great time yesterday. The Knicks pull off a road dub and temporarily jump the Miami Heat for the number 6 spot in the Eastern Conference as the playoffs draw nearer and closer. We're going to flip it over to the New Orleans Saints and the Derek Carr potential situation. Derek Carr, as many of you know, we have mentioned him quite a bit on our show, whether it was making fun of Brett for saying they're living together and they're rooming together, or whether it's more recently with his Pro Bowl comments. Derek Carr is on the way out of the Vegas Raiders. It's just a matter of how is he going to leave. I don't feel that anybody necessarily needs to trade for him to take on that contract demand. If the Raiders are to release him by the February 15th deadline to avoid a massive hit, I believe they will pay roughly about $5.6 million. I know it's a little under the $6 million threshold. And Carr can go about his business and find a new employer. He has a lot of potential guarantees if they wait past that day. So if I'm a team that wants to upgrade the quarterback position, I don't necessarily think you need to take on what the Raiders signed him to.
If you're a team that feels a Derek Carr is the difference, like the New Orleans Saints, then you absolutely do not take the chance and wait for him to get released, because there's going to be other teams calling.
No,
it's
indeed.
The Buccaneers are going to call. And
Let me ask you a question, though. I respect the guy. Don't get me wrong. But I want to ask your genuine opinion on this player. Do you consider him a top 10 quarterback?
Man, we already saw his much improved play last year. I mean, it was phenomenal.
I mean, listen, I'm going to be honest.
No.
I think the guy has an intangible of leadership that, if surrounded with the right coach and the right situation, can be a winner in this league still. I will say that. But when I think about what he could be looking at in guaranteed money, that's a chance I would take. If you want him, see what happens once he's a free agent. But I would not be up for paying that man what the Raiders had on paper for him. No, sir. And I think anyone who does that is a little bit out of their mind, because I feel that Sergio Rodriguez, friend of the show, said it best. He has a lot of awesome hot takes on IG. Check out the Sergio Rodriguez show. But he flat out said it. He's like, if you want to get in the playoffs, go get a Derek Carr. If you want to win a Super Bowl, go get an Aaron Rodgers. And I think that speaks volumes on the mountain and somewhere in the middle. No knock on Carr. I like the guy a lot. I think he is a great human and a true competitor, and someone who genuinely tries to get better. I don't blame him for all the failure this year with his Vegas Raiders. But I will say that, nah, dude, he does make sense in New Orleans. I'll be the first to say that. But if I'm New Orleans, I'm going to wait and see if I can snag him in free agency.
Yeah, and obviously the Saints are going to get a drift of things that the Colts are going to be interested. The Bucs are going to be the entire NFC South is going to be interested.
I would have to think so, because there's not many good quarterbacks in that division right now.
And even a team like, do I say Denver, if they can get away from that Russell contract?
I don't even know how they could get away with Russell's contract.
They'd have to trade, and hopefully the team takes on it. But
I'll be honest
about the guarantees.
I think Sean Payton's in there for the long haul. I think he's going to try to fix Russ. I don't think Russ is going anywhere.
No, I don't think so either. But that's just me giving examples. Even Seattle, you put him in that Seattle team, I think he's better than Geno Smith. So it's.
And how old is Geno now? Correct me if I'm wrong. Isn't he pushing 30 as well?
I think they came out 1 year difference.
I believe Carr is 31 going on 32, where Geno is 30 going on 31, something like that. Or 29 going on 30, something in that neighborhood. But I don't necessarily know if he's better than Geno or not. I really think it comes down to the system and what you like more. I think they both have limitations. 32. He's 32?
Yeah.
Get out of here. I didn't realize that. Wow.
Yeah, every dog's got their day. At least Derek has done it on a more consistent basis, and
That
that's
he
why
has.
I'll put him ahead of Geno. Yeah, so I think it's going to be, well, for one, the Raiders know if they want to trade him, they're going to have to lower their asking price because, like you said, if they don't, they're going to have to take that. They're going to have to either take that large cap hit or flat out release him.
I have a funny feeling the Saints are going to trade for him, and I think they're going to regret it. But I think they're going to trade for him because I think the Saints are so shell-shocked and weirded out that they haven't had a quarterback since Drew Brees. And then when you look at the history of that team, prior to Drew Brees, they had a lot of sorrowful years of no quality quarterback play prior. Like Archie Manning, Drew Brees, yeah. And then a lot of misery in between. And even with Archie, he played on some terrible teams. We're going to talk about another franchise, another player that's been blessed at the quarterback position. AR-12 talking about a dark retreat where he's going to mull his future. Oh, man. Never a dull moment with Aaron Rodgers news. I will say this. A couple of weeks ago, I was more confident that he was going to be a New York Jet, especially with the Nathaniel Hackett pickup. Now, after you speaking to me off air about some of this stuff, and also considering the differences between being his age, playing in the Northeast versus playing in a stadium, state of the art, and also having Vegas there, and he also is a California guy. It's not that far. I'm starting to buy into that there might be more to this of him being a Raider as opposed to being a Jet. He has his buddy Devontae Adams there, 1 year removed from playing together. Makes you wonder if this was kind of something that they talked about in advance. Why Rodgers was so willing to let Devontae go. Maybe because he knew that he was going to be joining him. Makes you wonder. Makes you wonder a little. Or is he just going to retire? That's a possibility. I feel that people close to him are saying that he's feeling a pressure to tell the world what he's going to do sooner than later.
Well, I mean, like we've said it over and over again, this is a business.
Indeed.
You know?
And a business that never stops, even in the offseason.
Exactly. And this is not a Google where, all right, you take your time whenever you're ready to retire. You know, we've got your back. This is we need to know what we're going to do as a team moving forward. That way we know what to address during the draft or for the teams trying to acquire a quarterback, whatever the case.
Yes. Eerily similar to the Brett Favre situation from a decade earlier, over a decade now. I think everybody waits for this chip to fall before they figure it out. But I'll be honest. The more I think about it, Vegas sounds more real because I think where I was struggling with seeing it as being a thing is that I just don't see him coexisting with a Josh McDaniels. That was my holdup. But knowing that, but then there's another part of me that's like, well, what if he gets McDaniels fired after year one? Or after game 8. I mean, I'm not trying to be an asshole, but I actually believe that that would be the holdup if I was Rodgers' camp or Aaron Rodgers. I don't think that he wants to play for him. That's my personal opinion. And then the Hackett thing with the Jets makes it intriguing. And the Jets are ahead of the Raiders right now in terms of immediate ceiling. But then I got to ask myself, is it about winning? Is it about comfort level? Is it about winning MVPs? Rob Gronkowski called him out on Twitter about that. He says, you're talking about winning MVPs. I'd be more worried about winning Lombardis.
Mm-hmm.
And it does make you question a little what Rodgers' motives are.
Yeah, and I mean, a lot of things you can look at too. A lot of people will say that Aaron Rodgers is not in the GOAT conversation because of the simple fact that he only has that one championship.
I also question his priorities. I'm not saying he goes into a game and doesn't want to win, but it doesn't seem like that same maniacal drive to just keep going like a Brett Favre or a Tom Brady.
Yeah, there's a lot. I just don't like the guy. I don't want a guy like him because of his inability to take accountability. Instead, he always throws people under the bus.
I do tend
as far as the way this is, if I'm Green Bay, I don't care if Aaron Rodgers is going to be more successful and it makes more sense in Las Vegas or if it makes more sense in New York. Either way, he's going to the AFC.
That's for sure.
The thing I care about is if I can get that number 7 pick from the Raiders, I'm probably going to trade him to the Raiders and still take next year's first round pick as well, knowing that whether it's the Jets or it's the Raiders, that first round pick next year is going to be probably a 24 and after, because I think an Aaron Rodgers puts the Raiders or the Jets in the playoffs. No question about it.
For the viewers and for the host of the show here, I want to ask if you know this offhand. If not, I could look it up. Does Aaron Rodgers possess a no-trade clause in there? Because I guess what I'm trying to say is for the Packers, the team that would be trading him, it would be more advantageous to possibly deal with the Raiders again, like they did a year ago with Devontae. And if I'm not mistaken, I think the Jets are picking 13th. Or is it?
Jets are the 13th because the Packers are 15, and Aaron Rodgers does not have a no-trade clause.
Okay, so they can send him where they want.
Where they want, yeah. So that's what I'm saying. I mean, yeah, the good thing to do would be to do right by him and say, all right, Aaron, where do you prefer? The Raiders? Okay, we're going to try to help facilitate that if, however, they give us the package we're looking for. If the Jets are throwing multiple first rounds and second round picks, because the Jets are really just an Aaron Rodgers away.
Oh, we know that.
You know, where the Raiders, they still need a little more.
How do you think this shapes up, honestly?
He's going to take his little 4-day hiatus and darkness retreat, probably be on all his psychedelics that we know he's on. And he's probably going to make a call to Shailene Woodley and say, I'm sorry. And I think he's going to end up playing a couple more years. I just can't see him quitting because his body doesn't look slower. He still has the great arm.
So he facilitates a trade to...
I think it's going to be the Raiders.
Oh my God! If my father was alive, my dad's best friend in the world, I call him Uncle. My Uncle Randy, diehard Raider fan. Oh my God, the ball breaking that would occur if he was able to talk shit to my dad. Should this trade go down? And it's funny because my Uncle Randy actually visited me here at my house about a year ago when I was still a member of the Jordan Patrick Show. And we actually did a show together. And this was a topic that we spoke about well over a year ago. And now it's a topic that won't go away. He gets back Adams. Maybe the Raiders make an emphasis to keep Josh Jacobs now, because now you're talking about you want to get all your offensive.
You have to.
Yeah.
You have to keep Josh Jacobs in that line. Even though Zamir White looks like he may very well be their next running back, right. I believe you've got to tag Jacobs and slowly transition over to Zamir White. I don't think he's quite there yet, but he's going to be another great Georgia running back that succeeds in the NFL. I will say that about Zamir White. He looked the part last year in the times he did play. So, I mean, if you ask me, I think I'd prefer to see him as a Jet, but in the AFC
I'm a
West,
Giant fan, and I kind of want to see him as a Jet because I just think it'll be really intriguing. But the more I think about it, it don't make sense for him, given the personality that he is, and given the way he is. I don't think he wants to deal with that New York media.
Yeah, and where better than going to Sin City? So, you look at the Raiders, their cap space right now. They can very well make a lot of this happen.
Yeah, they could.
They have $17.5 million available in cap space right now, and that's with having Derek Carr's contract on the books. You eliminate that contract, obviously that's going to free up about $32 million, I believe.
Yes.
So you have to now consider Josh Jacobs. Darren Waller, in my opinion, has to stay because a successful Aaron Rodgers has always had a successful tight end of some sort.
Yeah.
The tight end is very important for him.
Yes.
And then I think this would benefit a Hunter Renfrow a little more.
I can see that.
So, it's...
But then there's the other variable, similar to what Brady did when he first went to Tampa. when you have an opportunity, a rare opportunity to play with a generational talent like a Brady, like a Rodgers, like even Peyton, if you want to go back to his Denver days, guys are willing to take less that are established veterans, guys that can help teams win championships or help teams make playoff runs. They are more apt to making those sacrifices to play with people like that. And that is what could make this very interesting for those Raiders.
Yeah, and also look at Aaron Rodgers' comments from 2 weeks ago that he is willing to redo his contract.
Yes.
And people automatically say that's to stay to Green Bay. I'm like, no, that's not to stay in Green Bay. That's to help facilitate a trade.
He's cooked with Green Bay. I do want to ask this before we move it along to our final topic here. So should we both be correct at this point, and should he be a Raider? Where does that leave the Jets, in your opinion? Who are the Jets honing in on now if they don't get Rodgers?
They're going to be in a dogfight with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers for Jimmy G.
So you think Jimmy G is the move for the Jets?
Mm-hmm. Well, you're reuniting Robert Saleh and Jimmy G. Saleh knows him.
There is a connection there. That's an interesting one. So you would think that Jimmy G would take precedent over maybe facilitating something to get a Lamar in there?
Yeah, I think we're starting to.
Not to mention it's the same conference. So ultimately, I think Lamar stays in Baltimore. It's just them figuring out the numbers. The more I pay attention to this situation, I see Lamar in Atlanta or I see Lamar in Baltimore. I don't see him anywhere else. The more that I study and look at what is happening, whether it be the Expo track, whether it be just the Ravens and him being a part on the numbers. Ultimately, I do think the Ravens want to keep him, but on their terms. They're gonna have to compromise in the middle somewhere.
And the Jets, they have all the trade equity. They have the salary.
That's why I said maybe they'll direct their attention, because it only takes a couple of sparked ideas in the brain, and then the media follows it, and all of a sudden that's a story next week, where right now it's been quiet on the Lamar front. So that's how quick this stuff happens.
And you know what? The Lamar stuff is going to stay quiet, I think, for the next probably a little over a month. Then once we get to the scouting combine, I think we're going to start hearing the Lamar talks pick up. Let free agency happen, and as the draft nears is when we'll probably hear more trade chatter of a Lamar Jackson, because there's nothing that's holding him back. Like, we know for a fact he's going to be a franchise quarterback, and that's the given point. So you know what you're getting in regards to the salary cap or his salary for this year. And if you're the Jets, a team that is willing to sign him to a long-term deal, then deadlines make deals, and it'll get done the night before the draft or even draft day, But whereas in Aaron Rodgers, this is a much different situation. He's a quarterback under salary cap, and this is affecting a lot of teams. The Packers, I think it's pretty clear they're ready to move on to Jordan Love.
They got to make that draft pick count.
Yeah, and the Ravens have been on record saying we want to keep Lamar. Lamar has stated that he wants to stay there. The whole Jets thing is just something I've been following for a while, because
it's a matter of
season win.
The numbers work. And then the other reason why I don't know if he'll for sure get traded to the Jets is because they might not be a division rival, but they are divisional. They're a conference contender.
That's the big one.
Indeed. Before we get out of here, want to hit on Dallas Cowboys legend Michael Irvin, just to give the viewers a quick bit on this. We are doing an all-time best Super Bowl teams, similar to what we did with the best teams that didn't win the bowl in the season of greatness. We're going to speak on the top 10 and probably an honorable mention for the best Super Bowl teams. So Michael Irvin's Cowboys will obviously find their way on that list. But he was removed from Super Bowl coverage for his NFL Network gig. What do you have to elaborate on this, Zappy? You brought this to my attention.
So we don't have that much information, just that a woman had filed a complaint against Michael Irvin because of something he said in the hotel lobby. Okay. Their conversation was apparently less than 1 minute long.
Okay.
But what could have been said, what maybe was said, was enough to make this woman believe that she needs to file a complaint about it. Now, was it a simple gesture of, wow, you look really good. Have you been working out? Or that outfit looks great on you? We won't know at this time. But what we do know is NFL Network moved very quickly to remove him as an analyst for Super Bowl coverage. So
I would assume at the moment they're treating this more like a suspension as opposed to something permanent, or is this like already a finality with NFL Network?
No, it doesn't say anything about permanent. I think they're just doing it because it's Super Bowl week, and that's the last thing you want as a network.
Yes,
is having under the microscope.
What I did want to ask you though, about a month or so ago with the Willie McGinnis video that came to light, Willie is completely done with NFL Network, I'm assuming, right?
Yeah, we haven't. I mean, how could you, if you are in a position of power?
I get it.
How can you go against the video, especially when you physically see him lean down, get a bottle, and
But what I must say is this: it's weird, and don't get me wrong, I love Richard Sherman. I love Willie, and I actually have a lot of respect for Michael Irvin as well. I don't have any issue with any of these three men. But what I find interesting is that the Sherman video that we saw, that one somehow, some way appears to have been, I don't know if it's more so because it's a husband and wife getting into a volatile argument thing where it wasn't violent, but it certainly wasn't something that was very becoming to see when he's like, looks like he's going to bang the friggin' door down.
He was banging the door down pretty much.
Indeed.
It's just an expensive door.
Right. But I guess what I'm trying to say is just that in the beginning situation, there were details that there's something that involved his daughter, and he was whipping some ass on, I believe, an ex-boyfriend of hers, something in that neighborhood. And now you have the Mike Irvin thing. And as you said, we don't have all the facts yet. So let's be patient and let's do our best to not pass judgment. And
what we do know with Irvin, what we do know is he was drinking, and he has said it. So that's the only thing we know. So,
but we'll see how it plays, because having a drink isn't necessarily a crime either. We will see how that plays out. Until next time. Next time will be later on today. We will be doing our best Super Bowl teams show. Perhaps Idris will join us for that, or you might see our two ugly mugs again. For my guy, Mr. Michael Zappy, I am your host, Richie Hicks. Thank you so very much for watching the show. This was an important one to me. And shout out to my guy, Robert Cletus, who's a truck driver and said he was going to be chiming in and tuning in today. So thank you for your support. And thank you for putting the idea of some of the facts of Kareem Abdul-Jabbar in my brain, because I'll be honest, it's been something that's been brewing within me, but I don't necessarily think it would have been something that I would have spoken on if I wasn't kind of inspired to speak on it after seeing this man's post on social media. So shout out to you, sir, one of the truly great Green Bay Packer fans. And I appreciate all the support that we've been getting. And like I said on my post today, we are only as good as the people who watch the show. Please make it a point to like and subscribe to my YouTube channel. We will be back later today. Have a great day, everyone.
50 days.